During our visit on the PAX West show floor, we had the opportunity to meet with Beamdog. Beamdog is a Canadian video game studio located in Edmonton, Alberta, best known for the enhanced editions of beloved classic Dungeons & Dragons role-playing games like Baldur's Gate, Planescape Torment and Neverwinter Nights. We sit down with Beamdog COO Kael Nicholson and project director Luke Rideout to talk about the game, the team behind it and the future they envision for the game.
But all right, well, thank you for having us.
Appreciate it.
So yeah, mostly I was coming to check out for MythForce, but tell a little bit about Beamdog. What else are you guys doing?
Wow, so Beamdog's been around for about 13 years. It was founded by two of the founders of BioWare, Trent Oster and Cam Topher. For the first sort of 10 years of our life, we've been doing enhanced editions and platform ports of sort of this classic BioWare RPG titles. So your Icewind Dale, Baldur's Gate, Baldur's Gate 2, Neverwinter Nights, etc. So about 3 years ago, the dream was always to kind of do our own IP. And about 3 years ago, we decided we were going to do it. So we finished up some console projects with those titles, and then we staffed up a little bit. And we had a good partnership with our publisher at the time, so we thought, let's try and do this thing. So we had a team that was highly skilled in circa 1997 technology. So we really needed to kind of retool for a little bit and learn a little bit about Unreal and the tech we wanted to use, and it was a little probably overly ambitious.
Right.
Because it was kind of new team, new tech, new IP, all at the same time. We went from 20 to about 80 in the span of about 2-3 years. So we grew really fast.
Yeah.
And we knew we wanted to build a game that was going to be a good vehicle for the studio to make that kind of step, right? That wasn't going to be too challenging in terms of, like intensely story-driven RPGs or things like that. So we thought, let's build something fun, something we love. We're all big roguelike fans. We thought that's a good medium, right? We can kind of, it's kind of a creative, like we can add to it and it just keeps enriching. It's got a nice sort of formula for that. It kind of gets into some of those spaces that we'd like to play with a little bit, like procedural generation and really learning the tool set of Unreal. So we thought that's a really cool idea. Let's explore that a little bit. Some of us were playing a game called Barony. Have you guys ever played that one? Barony. It's like a low poly pixel co-op dungeon hack kind of thing. And I'm a huge fan of the classic like Westwood stuff. Like Eye of the Beholder and like those classic kind of dungeon stuffers. Luke as well. Our bosses obviously are from way back then, and we were kind of passionate about doing something in that space that was not only fantasy, which we love, and accessible, which is a big belief of ours, but a lot of us were kind of young parents too, and we kind of wanted something that our kids could enjoy.
Yeah.
And that was kind of difficult to find. Like, there's a lot of, especially in fantasy, it's a lot of it's sort of like that grimdark, gory kind of, which is fun and we love, but not really
maybe not the right thing.
A 6-year-old playing it at the time,
yeah. So we kind of knew that's where we were going to go, and then we started explorations into conception and ideation and that kind of stuff. And then Luke actually had the idea, being a giant animation nerd, to sort of lean into the Western animation of the 80s.
Yeah, I mean, that clearly shows, and I think you have the best trailer I've seen in years.
Thank you very much.
If you haven't seen it, you need to watch it. It's like, I played it like 4 times when I first saw it. Like, I'm just gonna play this again. It's just like, awesome. Can this be a show? Like,
that would be fun.
It's really, really well done.
Thank you so much.
It definitely captures that feel, and yeah, it was really impressive. So
we had a wonderful partner. Like the video editing partners we had were phenomenal. The music composers. I mean, when that track kicks in, it's so 1980s.
It is, and it's so hard to get right. It was like, wow, you could believe that it was a real show at some point.
Those are the guys at Archipelago Entertainment, Ross, Lara, and have just really phenomenal talents.
Yeah. And I haven't I haven't looked at it. I haven't played it myself yet. I know it's already out, but tell me a little bit about the game, how it's structured.
Oh, sure. Luke, why don't you take that one?
Sure, yeah, no problem at all. So the game itself is a 4-player cooperative multiplayer dungeon crawler. You basically choose one out of 4 sort of archetypal class characters who each have their own unique personalities, and you travel through a dungeon either alone or in a group to get to the boss of the dungeon, defeat them, and to move on to the next adventure. Currently in early access, we've only shipped the first adventure so far, which is called Bastion of the Beast Lord. Episode 2, Crypt of the Necromancer, is coming this fall, and we'll be dropping pretty soon. We're deep in development of that right now. And then the third and final adventure, where you go and fight Daedalus, the Vampire Lord, who's the boss of the game, is going due for first half of next year. Let's see. We've been in early access for about 4 months at this point.
Is it only 4 months? It feels like 2 years.
And how is that performing for you so far?
Pretty well, yeah. I think that we've managed to build a real strong community. We've got a lot of loyal players who are giving us a lot of really great feedback. We are in a 3-week update cadence right now, so every 3 weeks we release a new update with some additional balancing, some new features, some new content for the game, working towards those major milestones of like the new episode drops, new character coming in like the new year, that sort of thing as well.
We knew going early access that we wanted to provide some kind of really regular update cadence so that people understood
It's not forgotten.
It's not forgotten. You know, like, we're big early access fans. We participate in lots of early access titles. Some of my favorites were like Subnautica. I was pretty deep into. Like doing bug reports to their inline tools. And, Deep Rock Galactic was another favorite of mine. So, we really like that ecosystem. We really like the transparency of that development process. And as a studio that's kind of built its roots on, very community focused, like Dungeons and Dragons is a very sort of community involved thing. And when we did these enhanced editions, we really kind of tried to embrace, the modding community and hired a bunch of our developers from that community. So we've always reaped amazing benefits from being really tightly knit with our fans and with our community. And this felt kind of like a natural extension of that. This is our first early access title, but it didn't really feel bumpy. Like it was.
We had that discussion a few times with a few people this weekend. The problem with early access is sometimes it's used as an excuse. You just get money now, and the game never goes anywhere. And then the excuse is, well, it's early access, but it never reaches really a stage where you feel it's final. But when it is final, it's like, well, it's the same game. You just put a 1.0, and that was it. So it's
going to wander to the doldrums.
Having a 3-week update thing is at least good because you see that progression.
Seeing the movement. You guys are progressively doing something.
Well, with that, do you have a plan of like this is where we target to be the final release already, or are you still waiting for where you are now?
So we have a roadmap that we're working towards, which includes sort of a very reasonable amount of content that we've had sort of pre-planned that includes those 3 adventures, which we're targeting once again sort of the early half of next year, but it's going to be very much dependent on how community feedback continues to come through. And we do want to keep up this sort of 3-week cadence, but we're also regularly sort of polling our players and also like checking internally about whether the game is feeling the way that we really want it to feel as we go, and that constant evaluation and reevaluation to make sure that we've got the right product and that we are pushing towards like the game that we're all going to be really happy to call 1.0 when it gets to it.
Yes.
And we try to give that cadence some texture as well, because it's no fun if sort of like just one feature launches every 3 weeks and then you're kind of just done. We wanted to have some exciting beats, so some of them are just really like a bunch of quality life bug fixes, one cycle, some new like character, and like maybe a new weapon or something like that one cycle, and then one cycle's like a Halloween update or something.
Well, at least it's not it's obviously co-op, so there's less of this. They really cry about this weapon, so now we got to balance it because people are. I would
love to say that no one has commented on the balance of the weapons. But I mean, it's
It's a little different though than if it's
For
like,
sure it
you know,
is,
I
yeah.
just like using this and then I
because
won't use it
competitive
then.
is like people get so angsty about
It gets and then it gets, usually the people are fine, they don't say anything, so now there's people screaming, so you react to it and things like that.
and overcorrect, and
Right.
that's
That's really
something we
dangerous.
talk about a lot. Is sort of how do you, balance sort of like a healthy feedback cycle and transparent development processes with artistic vision and sort of the sort of the pillars of the game, the sacrosanct stuff, right? And that's kind of, I think, how we've done it is we really sort of focused around the vision that Luke is kind of the holder of, and tried to marry our interpretation of the feedback, because a lot of that stuff, as you guys know, is symptomatic, right?
Absolutely.
There's some bad system here somewhere, and like it results in this incredibly unfair situation with the character. They're like, that character's OP. It's like, oh no, it's just that we totally screwed up this thing over here. So trying to really understand and analyze like what that is, what people are really worried about or complaining about or loving for that matter, and trying to sort of make sure that we're growing the game in a healthy way in that space.
Absolutely. So obviously you have these plans, these 3 adventures. A continuation of that, is that maybe having more adventures, or do you say now it's MythForce 2?
That's a great question, and I think some of that will depend on sort of reception, of course, right? I mean, we love
Because it's not a games as a service, right? It's not.
No. Yeah, it's a premium product. Yeah. I mean, I think it depends what it's going to evolve into, because if people really love it and want to keep playing, MythForce, I don't see why we wouldn't want to just continue adding content to the game. Ad infinitum. That's sort of like a Deep Rock Galactic kind of model, right? Then again, if people are sort of like, oh, that was really cool, like I'm on other stuff, then MythForce 2 could be a really fun thing to do too. So I don't think there's anything that's written in stone right now.
I understand. Yeah.
But I think we'd be really open to kind of either model if the community feels one way or another.
The gameplay you mentioned, it's a co-op for 4 players, but I assume that's up to 4 players?
Yeah, up to 4. Yeah.
So you said some people go alone. Does it scale? So you have more people, does it then scale up?
It does, yeah.
There are a number of factors that sort of work into exactly how that difficulty scales. We didn't want to just make it like straight up more HP, just meat walls to
it's
to
not
fight
like a linear.
against, but sort of enemy aggression, tuning, and the population of enemies that you're fighting to kind of balance against a larger group of player characters and so on. But there's a number of things that we do for sort of scaling depending on how many players are in the game. We didn't want to make solo impossible, although it is significantly more difficult, just because there's also the additional factor of like, you have nobody to pick you up if you die. As soon as you're down, you're down.
That was what my question was going to be was if you're running solo, do you have the other characters in the AI capacity? Or are you just solo?
You are truly alone.
Truly alone. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, you can
And
try
if
to run
you go
solos
down-
with each character, I guess.
Yeah.
And if you do go down, you guys, is there a way to get back up?
At the moment, there is not.
Okay.
Yeah, well, these are one of those things that we are like looking at community feedback and sort of discussing internally how we want to handle that. So far, the reception of like the solo play versus the multiplayer and sort of the way that players treat them as sort of separate objects has been relatively positive. But at the same time, we also don't want the 2 experiences to be so divorced from one another.
Yeah.
So we're looking at what our options are for that.
Sure.
It could be like me, where basically my captive teams at home, they're going to college, so they're like, too bad. So I got my wife to play, and we don't like with random strangers. So now it's 2 of us, also because we want to be more relaxed and take our time and figure things out. And then it's nice that you can at least duo and know that it's not impossible, because you have to have a team of 4, because now you have to look for the rest.
Most of my co-op is 2 player as well.
2 players,
Yeah,
it's
hard to
like a
find
real
stuff that's
sweet
really
spot.
good for that.
So you miss out on so much of content when you do that. We played a lot of Marvel Avengers, and it's like, well, we are at the point where we want to move over, but we need a full team, and that's just never gonna, so it's like, okay, well, you miss all that content. That's a shame.
So true.
But what's your incentive for players to keep coming back? You have 3 adventures, 4 adventures. So is there leveling up? Are there unlocks? Are there weapons? What makes me coming back?
Yes. So there is a metagame. There is a metagame as well. You're playing towards. Every win or loss gets you what we call rank XP. You're growing your character as you continue to play the game. We didn't want to make it in a way where like you had to grind to be viable, but we have this system called infusions where you get small bonuses or small gameplay tweaks to your character, the ability to modify the way that your special abilities work and so on, to add a little bit more flavor and texture to the game as you continue to go along. And it also results in the unlocking of new artifacts, which are sort of slight gameplay changing items that you equip in the loadout, which can do things as benign as start the game with a little bit more HP, to as abnormal as you have 3 hit points. Every hit you take does 1 HP. Good luck, you know.
Right.
So,
yeah, but you need that endorphin rush a little bit once in a while to get a little. Oh yeah, that's why I'm doing it.
Part of the fun of those roguelikes is that kind of, dealing with unexpected issues and also that perfect storm magic, right? Where
Yes.
everything just kind of clicks for your build and everything's coming up perfect, and you just get that beautiful smooth line run for the dungeon.
and as in the manner of a lot of sort of modern roguelikes, we do have sort of in-session level ups with random additional perks and things like that also serve to change the nature of every individual.
I apologize, I've not had the chance to actually play the game yet, but when you're saying like the different builds, is it going to be like an unlock, or is it going to be like a loot drop style?
Good question. So right now it's both, or they're sort of in session and out of session things. We call them the inner loop and the outer loop. So right now there are things like loot is in the in session, so you can collect just a good drop of loot that's particularly powerful or synergizes particularly well with the character you selected. But the infusion system is Luke's referring to, and artifact selection, some other components are outside, and they're part of that sort of ranking up system. So you can tweak your build a little bit and say, I'm going to be, a very tanky mage, or I'm going to be, a very aggressive tank, or something like that. So depending on sort of your flavor, you can kind of tilt it a little bit one way or the other. But we wanted the characters to both kind of be, to have a bit of flavor each, So we've got sort of like a high single target DPS, we've got a tank, we've got a mage, that's a bit of a glass cannon depending on the build. But we wanted to give people a freedom to kind of nudge that in one direction or another, so that they get kind of their play style and also the dynamism of the session, right? Because sometimes you start off with a mage, you're like, I'm going to be a powerful mage, and you just keep getting axe skills for some god reason. So you're like, I guess I'm axe mage today.
Right.
Yeah.
And how long is it run through on average?
Session right now is what, about 40 to an hour?
A successful run takes about an hour.
Takes about an hour.
Where you beat the boss and you make it to the end. A unsuccessful run ends within a minute or two. So.
True. Okay. Fair. But yeah. Okay. So about an hour.
So we'll be about 5 minutes in.
Yeah. Over and over and over.
Yeah.
You gotta keep trying.
But as with most roguelikes, it's sort of expected the first few times you play the game, you're going to be making mistakes, you're going to be learning from those mistakes, growing your skill, learning the enemy telegraphs and things like that, and sort of building your repertoire, learning the language of the game, and then sort of going session by session and getting further and further into the dungeon. We find that the average player takes about 10 to 15 sessions before they get their first complete clear.
Okay, that's fair enough. That all adds to the time as well.
Yeah.
What is one of the features or things you have in there that you're most excited or proud about? Like like you're happy that you nailed this part of the game. What is that? What is that for you? If there is anything.
For me, it's the 4 distinct characters. We really, right from the get-go, we had a lot of discussions about the sort of merits of bespoke, specialized characters versus like completely player-driven. Customized characters are absolutely a lot of fun, but we also wanted to make something, because we were going with the 1980s cartoon aesthetic, that had a very obvious feel for the characters. And when you create a character and then all of a sudden that character has their own personality that you don't control, that doesn't feel quite right. So we definitely wanted to push towards getting 4 characters who each felt both useful to play, but also felt like they belonged in a 1980s cartoon sort of setting. So the way that we managed to pull those sort of 4 archetypical sort of D&D class type characters and also give them really strong personalities, and have seen that through all of our community feedback. Everybody argues about which is the best character, and that's the perfect thing that we really want, right?
So what is the best character?
For me, the best character is Victoria, because I am good at playing tanks. I'm terrible at range, so like Hawkins is my worst character. But Hawkins is like the character that most first-time players are clearing with, so obviously I'm different from them. But
for the record, Rico is clearly the best character.
Okay, that's good to know.
Victoria is fun, but
yeah.
But in terms of features, I think like the obvious one is is the art. We're super proud of the art. You know, the fanatical dedication these guys put into that is phenomenal. And
I
there's
suppose I think of that as just like the soul of the game, more so than even the feature itself. But accomplishment-wise, the art is definitely
nailed the aesthetic for sure.
That was certainly one of the fights we picked with Unreal too. You know, it is not PPR lit. It is not rendered in the way that Unreal likes to render things. There's a lot of post-processing in that stack, but I'd say the one that I'm probably most proud about would be the first-person combat. You know, that's a hard thing to get right, to get good even. And we slaved over those frame by frame to try and make sure that like the weight felt right and the impact was there and the speed felt smooth. And yeah, I mean that's one of those things I think we would love to see, you know, go into future games as well.
Yeah, something that you can take that with you now. You worked on that all this time. I think for me the final question is, as a Dungeons & Dragons animated series fan, when do you get a skin for that?
You know, we have talked to some people in sort of a licensing world about options for that world. One of the models that I really love is kind of the Dead by Daylight kind of licensing model, where they keep introducing kind of characters from beloved films and TV shows. I think that's a really cool way to go about it, and if people are excited about the game, and we've had a lot of great reception so far with some of those licensed partners, I hope to be able to bring something like that along.
That would be really cool. I'm really excited for that.
Totally.
So,
Thank you very much.
yeah, thank you very much. Appreciate it. So,